Hello, welcome back to my channel. Back to Maggie May and at Mags127. And like and subscribe if you want to join in the chat. Some things are hard to talk about, but you take the positive outlook on life and you have survived them. You have come through things that today you probably wouldn't have the same things happen to you because of a different outlook and protection around children. So there was two things that happened to me. As I've told you, when I was young, as a young child, I would have to go for the messages. The note I'd be given in the handbag, the list to get shopping for my mother in the old bridge. That's what it was called. It was a little village, but it was called the old bridge. So excuse that, that's just the way I am. My throat is a bit dry, so I'm going to have a sip. Hope you're all well. I've never seen a summer like it in Ireland. Get yourself a drink of water. I always have the water on hand, just to have the fluids in. So anyway, we'll get on with the story. I was pretty young, maybe 9, 8, 9, and I would come home from school and then I would get the shopping list and go back down. But this particular day, it wasn't a school day, it was a weekend, it was a Sunday. I like to sit up in my bed when I'm telling these stories. But I was sent down with the handbag, the list, and the two houses, whereas the other half of the family, the aunts and uncles, lived in the next bungalow that we had moved up to, that we lived in, if that makes sense. When we moved from the old house, I should hear me talking about in my previous videos, that we moved from the old house up to the new houses. So we were split then. The aunts and uncles were in the house next door, and then we had our own house with a bathroom finally in it. And things were a little bit better. A little bit better. But I was sent down anyway. I would go in next door and whatever they wanted, they would write out a list. It would be like my uncle's wife, she, whatever they wanted. So I went down, I walked down to the old bridge, got my list out. The lady in the shop gave me all the items, and I started to head home. Yeah. I'm still recording. I'm still pondering about what I'm going to talk about. Mm. The second one. 1 minute. As you know, I have my cigarette. I have my smoke because some of these things are, you know, scary, and I have to like have a cigarette to kind of talk about them because no matter how much I'm positive you have gotten over them, when you reminisce and go back over them, you do remember that time, and that's why I do have a cigarette. The second incident, I was much older. I had kids and everything at the time, but I was with my partner, and I used to babysit also for my aunt. But myself and my partner, who were just kind of newly together, we decided to go for a walk after babysitting for my aunt. We used to love to go for walks back in the day, you know, and go up by the old bridge and the hill. And that was my plan, to go up by the mother's house and visit the spring over the road, where I would sit down, have a chat with my partner, and talk about life in general. But the thing was, when we were passing through the old bridge, there was another group of grown teenagers, you know, and I didn't take any notice of them, but he seemed to have turned around and spotted them walking up behind us. But I said to him, let's walk a bit faster. So we did. But then when we walked a bit faster, they walked a bit faster. Then I said, okay, if we go up the steps and go up the hill, we won't have anywhere to turn. There is nowhere to go. You're trapped. But off of that hill at the roundabout, there was a narrow road. It's not a road, it was a lane, a boreen, we called it. It was a narrow little road, and at the beginning of that, there was a house. So I said to him, we started to pick up space. We kind of started to run a bit. It was scary. And they were definitely following us. And they were going to waylay us above at the hill in the dark, where there's no lights up there. Once you go past that boundary, there is no lights in the mountain. They don't have street lights like you would in towns and places, you know. So that house at the corner of that boreen, that lane, it's a country with ditches, a country lane. We went into that house to try and, save ourselves. We thought that if we went into that corner house, that they wouldn't, follow us in there, that would put them off. But the thing was, the man that lived there came out with massive stick, you know, big massive stick, and started threatening us. And we tried to explain what was after happening and what was happening, but he wasn't having it. No, get off my property. Get away. Get off my property. So we were outside the gate on the lane, and the only thing I could think of, I said to my partner, run. Because we were trapped. If we had gone up the hill, there was no lights, we were trapped. So this way, with this laneway, would bring us back into town. So I said to him, run, even though it was pitch dark, and don't stop. And I think I was wearing a pair of Doc Martens at the time, and I was lucky. But we held each other's hands and we ran. And I told him, it doesn't matter, we can't see, it was pitch dark. over that lane. Don't stop until we come out, where he wouldn't have known the place very well, but I did. We would have come out at an opening and down the hill, and we'd be back in civilization, where there'd be houses and people. And we did that. Um, our hearts were in our mouth, because nobody should have to, go through that. Those teenagers had nothing good on their minds, because first they were walking behind us. Then when we sped up our walking, they sped up their walking. And then when we ran to get away, they ran. And what they had done in the meantime was, on the borough boundary, there was a wall, a couple of yards of a wall on the borough boundary. When you go up a little bit, there was a flat wall. They had built a flat wall there in later years. They sat on that. They all sat on that and waited for us to come back. But I told my partner, run. And that saved us from God knows what, with these teenagers. Well, they're not teenagers, they're about 18 or more. And that was a frightening experience. But I know often still today, he will often bring that up with me and say, do you remember that time? And he said, you didn't cop it at the beginning, that we're being followed. And, they were not going to, they weren't doing it to be friendly or anything. Obviously, they were up to no good. So that was a number two frightening, traumatic experience for me with my partner. And thank God we came out in the opening, where the houses were and street lights in the town. But walked home and just said I didn't feel like going for a walk again, the same way. Try a different way the next time. Because I always loved the mountain air, being brought up in it. But that was us finished with that. But the first and the second experience, they were scary, especially the one as a child. Those people who I don't know what kind of an upbringing they have, but go to attack a child, give me your money, or else. It felt like I was being held up by, like, a highwayman was holding me up. He was a bully, but I could see my life flashing in front of me. So guys, just be careful out there. And that was many years ago for me, because I'm 63 now, since the 10th of August. But mind your children. Don't let your children out of your sight. So that's my stories for today. I love you and leave you until my next story. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye for now.